spent in a miserable way.
US News US-China hail trade talks progress as Trump touts 11 meeting USA News Al Jazeera. China says important progress in latest round of US talks aimed at resolving dispute between top two global economies. Chinese and negotiators have made important. The two sides held candid. US negotiators also reported as substantial progress following the conclusion of the talks, even as the White House emphasized in a statement that AS's scheduled tariff increase on $200 billion of Chinese goods to 25% from 10% was a hard. Economists say that prospect a sharp escalation of which last year saw the two countries slapping tariffs on more than $360 billion in two-way trade would be a big blow to the global economy. Speaking at the White House during a meeting on Thursday with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He, Trump said he was optimistic that the economic powerhouses could reach this. With economic growth in China partly due to Beijing's efforts to reduce debt, investors on edge at the prospect of further trade disruption, the stakes for the talks have become especially high. But the negotiations have been complicated by Washington's aggressive actions against Chinese telecoms giant Huawei, with the U.S. Department of Justice this week unveiling sweeping charges against the company and some of its executives, including Meng Wanzhou, the chief financial officer and daughter of its founder. He added that the Huawei saga has overshadowed the trade talks amid widespread belief in Beijing that the case brought against the world's largest supplier of telecommunications network equipment and second biggest maker of smartphones is politically. No specific plans for a meeting with Chinese President were announced, but Trump said there could be more than one meeting. Hainan Island, off the south coast of China and close to Vietnam and Thailand, the two countries mentioned as the most likely locations for a second summit later this month between Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is being touted as a possible site for the Trump 11 meeting, as well as Beijing A. That U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin were invited to bring a U.S. negotiating team to Beijing around mid-February, with dates still pending.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. I get fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park.